Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Breaking the Game show here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. I'm Stephen Gillespie, and today we're going to continue with our NBA player tiers. We've done tiers 4 and 3, which working our way up was from super starters to demi stars. Today we're going to be evaluating tier 2, which are labeled just stars, and no fancy cool name for them. They're just going to be stars. But there's some really talented players that we're going to evaluate here. All in all, it's going to be about 19 players. And today, I'm not going to do this by myself. I brought in my crew from the Off Ball Network, starting off JP, friend of the show, who's been on multiple times. I'm pretty sure, JP, you've broken down every tier with us so far, if memory, except tier 4. So you were here for tier 3. You're coming in for tier 2. How we doing today, JP?
Man, thank you for having me on for the show, man. What's up, everybody, man? Man, I'm excited to talk about Till 2. Some questionable names here, but I'm
Oh, here we
definitely
go.
ready for it.
All right, I'm already getting a little bit of shots fired at me, but I can take it on the big boy. All right, so along with JP the franchise, we have our good friend Ersin Demir coming over from the. He's another Knicks fan, so the thing about off the ball is we're heavy with Knicks fans, but we got one of the best
Yeah,
ones in there. Ersin, how we doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Excited to have you on the show. I know we've done a little bit of work before, but making your break in the game to debut here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio, super excited about it, man. Thank you for coming on. And then
Yeah,
last
thanks a
but
lot for having
certainly,
me. It's an honor.
oh, dude, the pleasure is all mine. It was only a matter of time before we got you on here. So, and last but certainly not least, the man with the plan, the big brains on Chris here. Chris LeBron, host of the Off the Ball Pod, who we know is on the rotation here on Off the Ball Mondays on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. Prez, Chris, how we doing today, brother?
Hey man, pleasure to be with you, fine gentlemen. Today talking ball. Can't wait to get into this topic. And so let's go. I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. So, again, just kind of recapping where we were to where we are now. We worked our way up from tier 4 to tier 2. And basically, here's the logic behind this. Tier 1, these are guys that are going to be able to be the best player on any team no matter what. They're going to put your team in contention because that's just how good they are. And that's going to travel no matter what the scenario is. Tier 2 is a little bit different. That's the one that we're going to be discussing today. Tier 2, ideally on a championship team, if you have an MVP, you can have one of these guys and you're pretty much going to be in contention. Or you can have two of these guys. We're going to see a little bit of that as we discuss this tier today, where there's several teams that have two of these guys and they're in contention status as well. And then so on and so forth. Tier 3, just kind of depending on the situation and the players on around them, they could be kind of your second best player, but ideally speaking, they would be your fourth. And then tier 4, these are guys that you're not really going to count on to carry the load, but they're going to be very valuable contributors in your starting rotation. And again, all the players within this pool that we have listed average out to less than 5 players per team, which we all know is what's required for your starting lineup. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into player 2, or excuse me, tier 2 for the player rankings. And I'm going to pull up this graphic that I made. I'm getting a little bit creative here in my free time. And here's what I did. I have for everyone that's watching and listening live right now, thank you so much for doing so. We're going to have this graphic pulled up, and we're going to go ahead and get going down the list of players that we're going to be discussing today. Again, there's going to be 19 of them. So, Chris, I'm just going to turn this over to you. I'm just going to read off 5 names and just kind of overall names that stand out in this list. Do you agree that they belong here? And just a little bit of breakdown on these guys. So, the first 5, I got Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, Devin Booker, Paul George, and Trae Young. Do you agree that these are tier 2 guys, or what's your overall breakdown of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely are. Just the way you have it set up, I think they are tier two guys in just the way everything's layered out. Um, Kawhi, I mean, he may be argument that he's tier one, with his whole career and everything he's done. But I'm not mad that he's in the second tier. Kyrie, we know what Kyrie's done. When he's on the court and he's focused in, he's lasered in, he's one of the best, one of the best guards we've ever seen. And obviously we've seen him win a championship before. Devin Booker really stepped up this year. He was amazing this year in the playoffs. You know, they finally put a good team around him, gave him CP3, and we saw what he could do. Obviously, he didn't win a championship, but he still had a great showing in his first playoffs. They get to the finals in your first year, in the playoffs is definitely a good. Paul George, one of the most disrespected players, on this list by far. I mean, the level of disrespect this man gets. I understand he's had some playoff woes, but especially last year he was hurt. This year he balled out in the playoffs, and if Kawhi don't get hurt, I mean, we're talking. People will be talking about Paul George differently. They might have just gone all the way and won it all. And then Trey, we know what Trey did. I mean, you saw what he did to me and Erson's Knicks in the first round. He put this team on his back, and with a lot of turmoil in this season, new coach, all that, beef with John Collins supposedly, and they got all the way to the conference finals, and lost to the champion. So I have no issues with this tier.
Okay, and you brought up a good point, and Erson, I'm going to turn this over to you after I say this. The argument for Kawhi Leonard being in Tier 1, I totally agree with that, and if you feel that way, I'm not going to be mad at you or knock you for that. I'm looking at not just what they've done in their totality of their careers, right? It's coming into this season. One, we don't really know if Kawhi is going to play, and if he does, this is just another injury, right? And it's going to be interesting to see how he goes moving forward. So, Erson, what do you think about the first 5 guys of Kawhi, Kyrie, Booker, PG-13, and Trae Young?
Well, actually, if I look at Kawhi, I agree with Tier 2 because in the San Antonio, he wasn't the number 1 guy. So to be an MVP, Tier 1 player, you have to be the number 1 guy on your team. And after that, he went to Toronto. He was the number 1 guy. He brought them a championship. But again, he was playing in a star-loaded team with Lowry, and that there was a team that was already used to playing playoffs runs. They got a deep playoff run, and with Kawhi, they won it. And now with the Clippers, I don't think Kawhi is showing enough, mainly because of health, but otherly because of, if I look at the names in the list at Tier 1, he doesn't show enough in correlation to those guys to put him in Tier 1. And that's the reason for me that I have Kawhi on Tier 2. Okay. And for Kyrie, the same. I think Kyrie was also never the number 1 guy in a winning situation. He won a ring with LeBron James. He's one of the greatest guards in the league today, but is he a Tier 1 guard? For me, like Steph, like Damian Lillard? No. And I think Kyrie is in the right tier as well. Regarding Devin Booker, I might put him on the demi-stars as for now, but he had a great year where he showed flashes of what he can do on a winning team, because he was in a good situation in Phoenix where he could take his time and develop. And he's showing development every year. And now with Chris Paul on the team, Devin Booker emerged to a no-brainer all-star. For if you name an all-star in the West, his name will be on there, not maybe in starting 5, but Devin Booker is a respected guard in the NBA now, and mainly because of this year's Suns. But I think due to his age and him being also not the number 1 on his team, maybe Tier 3 would have been a better situation for him.
Okay.
And regarding Paul George, I think it's a similar situation for Kyrie, and same goes for Paul George. I think defensively he's one of the greatest players in Tier 2. If I look at the list, he might have been in Tier 1. I would also put him in the top 3 of defensive guys on that list. But overall, I think Paul George is a star, but he's below that superstar level for me because, I think you have to win a ring and win an award to get in that Tier 1. I think Tier 2 is a good situation for him nevertheless. And coming to Trae Young, man, he hurt our Knicks so bad, but man, to be honest, I have nothing more than respect for that guy, man. I think with that age, he's taking a team on his back in a situation where they got a new coach, and they got one of the best records after the new coach got in, and they won against us in 5 games. They beat Joel Embiid Sixers. They beat, and they even had a chance to make it to the conference finals. I think I have nothing more than respect for that guy, man. I think he will be a Tier 1 player in a couple of years from now. A no-brainer. I think from that list, I think on the long term, Trae Young is, definitely the number 1 for the 5 guys that you that we talked about.
Excellent, yeah, and I love that projection of Trey moving forward. And we're
Yeah.
going to be doing our conference predictions here soon. I have the Hawks kind of highly favored, not only just because of Trey, but because of the coaching of Nate McMillan, and then just the continued growth and development of their young core there, Erson. So, great analysis on your part. JP, what about you? Same five. What do you think?
Kawhi Leonard definitely is an arguable in tier one. I figure, reason that he wasn't in tier one is because availability and load management that he's doing. If he was available every single game, I think he'll easily be a tier one because he's top 5 in the war. A lot of people are going to bring up an argument, that he should be in tier one because of what he did in Toronto. Yeah, that was just only like one season, but he definitely did carry that Toronto team and got them into contention. They got a lot better after they traded DeMar DeRozan away because LeBron just kept killing Toronto in the playoffs. But Kawhi got him over the hump, but LeBron was in the West though. So, so Kawhi Leonard and that championship in San Antonio. Yeah, you had Tony Parker, Ginobili, and Tim Duncan. But he still won Finals MVP, though. He's a 2-time Finals MVP. He's a 2-time champion. Definitely kills him if he doesn't have that regular season MVP because he's not available and he stays hurt. And it would probably be talking different about Kawhi Leonard if he was available in the playoffs last year. We would definitely be talking a little bit more about him. Kyrie Irving, I think he's going to stay in tier 2. He would never be a tier 1 in my eyes because you see what he did in Boston, even though he had a championship with LeBron in Cleveland, but LeBron was the number 1 guy.
Yeah.
And Kyrie tried to be the number 1 guy in Boston, and it didn't really work out. I'd rather have Isaiah Thomas than Kyrie Irving in Boston. And he'll definitely stay, and he'll give you the score. He's talented offensively. Never going to give you like much defense, and he's not available at all times too as well. So, but he still definitely stays in tier 2. Devin Booker really stepped up. I think Devin Booker could get slept on because he's playing in Phoenix, and they were a bad team for a while, and then they finally got some pieces around them. Devin Booker is probably a really underrated shooting guard because I've seen how he scores. He scored 70 against the Boston Celtics, a good Boston Celtics team. Yep. So that's very well for a guy that young to score 70 on the Boston Celtics, a really good Boston Celtics team. But he definitely really stepped up in the playoffs. Having Chris Paul to really anchor him and be able to give him that influence, he definitely stepped up to the plate and definitely lived up to expectations as a shooting guard. Paul George, the thing about Paul George that's just kind of missing is that how good would he be in the playoffs? He had the best playoff win last year. Just being like that, second guy, but also being the number 1 guy because Kawhi was out. That Indiana team, you can make an argument for that Indiana team, but like there was a lot of pieces around that Indiana team, like Roy Hibbert, Lance Stevenson, George Hill, Danny Granger that don't really get a lot of credit. David West too as well. Mm-hmm. So. But Paul George definitely stays in tier 2. The wing is missing. He's a very consistent player, but sometimes play really inconsistent. And when you're given the name Playoff P and not living up to the expectations, then it's a lot different. Trae Young definitely stepped up in the playoffs, especially again, Nate McMillan as a coach. That was a plus. Lloyd Pierce was an all right coach, wasn't the best coach for Trae Young, but Trae Young showed flashes of how good he could be. And we never expected Atlanta Hawks to go that deep in the playoffs. I had the Knicks beating them in the first round, and Trae Young just put on a show. And you could just see how special he's going to be. And Wilson made a good point that he could projectively go into tier 1 one day. But when you have Steph Curry and Damian Lillard still there in the league, I don't think he's going to get there unless that Atlanta team like gets a championship or just goes to the finals every year. I just don't see him going to tier 1 just yet, but he has the capabilities and the skill set to go into tier 1 because he can make the Atlanta team better. And I'm very high on the Hawks this year after seeing their performance in the playoffs. So Trae Young definitely deserves to be in tier 2. So.
Okay, yeah, great analysis. I kind of echo a lot of those same sentiments. And one thing that was brought up was the fact that, last year you probably wouldn't put Devin Booker here and he's kind of slept on. I agree with that a lot. I really am against the whole movement when, especially today, right, just kind of sidebarring here, I put up a poll like which point guard would you rather build around, and I had John Morant, SGA, De'Aaron Fox, and Jamal Murray. And one of the arguments that I saw against some of these other young point guards, right, that have only been in the league for 4 seasons maybe, people were like, well, they haven't won anything yet. Well, no kidding. Like, these guys are under the age of 25. I don't think that winning should be your argument against a player 25 and under, especially now that we just saw Devin Booker on a really good Phoenix team go to the NBA Finals under the age of 21 because he had a veteran presence alongside of him now. So that was a huge benefit to him.
And
so,
one more thing. I'm so sorry.
No,
Devin Booker, just same as Paul George, he's very disrespected. The dude was a 2-time All-Star. Definitely deserves to be in tier 2. I can understand the argument for tier 3, but he's a 2-time All-Star, and he was very disrespected. He didn't make an All-NBA team this year, which shocked me because that Phoenix team was number 2 in the West, and he didn't make an All-NBA team. Like, if he made an All-NBA team this year, I think we would have definitely had him in tier 2 because he definitely stepped up to the plate. But yeah, he's just very slippery. Just like that one person we're talking tier 1. Like whenever the next show is, he slept on too, and finally he just came out, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's really that good." Well, of course, I mean, as a hardcore basketball fan, he is really that good. So yeah, Devin Booker gets disrespected and slept on. Even though I don't like him as a person, but he is very flipper. He is a tremendous, skillful player.
Wait, you don't like Devin Booker as a person?
What
did he do to you?
Devin Booker, I heard things. I just don't like the guy. I just don't like the guy.
All right, so we know that JP doesn't like the guy. Me personally, like, I have a guy in this list that, like, I don't like that I like him, if that makes sense. And Trae Young is that guy that we just talked about. I don't like that I like him. He's just kind of grown on me. Like, against me literally putting up my own bias and preference against him, he's broken through that. Now I'm like the biggest Trae Young dude, and I feel like in the network, other than maybe Jelani now, right?
I've defended him so much more than if I wasn't a content creator, I would despise Trae Young.
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't an NBA, a basketball content creator, I know for a fact I would despise Trae Young because I wasn't high on him at Oklahoma. I thought he's going to be a inefficient scoring guard. He's going to average 20, 25, but shoot it at 39%, 40%. And as you start doing more content and you start appreciating the game of basketball and diving into it more, I don't want to say it too loud because Knicks fans might get mad at me, but I found myself defending him more than I would ever, because I'm like, he's everything you would want. Like in a player.
I got talked out of putting him as an all-star and an all-NBA player in our very own group chat because I was going to put him over Russell Westbrook, Mr. Triple-Double himself. We'll talk more on him here in a little bit.
I was with that. I think I was on board with you with that.
I was on board with that. Yeah.
All right.
I agree with that as well.
All right. Well, here we all go. Now everybody is a day one ride or die with Trae Young now here on the network. So there we go. All right. So we'll carry on here from players 6 through 10. And Chris, I'll turn this over to you. Now, the first player that I'm going to name, everyone just kind of hold your breath and count to 3. Okay. There's going to be some analysis that we put in on this. James Harden is tier 2. Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, and closing it out with Chris Middleton. So Chris, I'm sure the biggest name that people are going to be kind of, opposed to us or 100% with us, there's probably not going to be any middle ground guys here, is James Harden. So we want to emphasize all 5 of those players, but just if you would please lead with James Harden. What do you think about me having him here in tier 2?
He's tough. He's tough because it's either he's an MVP, tier 1, or he's a tier 2.
Mm-hmm. I
can understand why someone would have him because he hasn't won a championship yet and all that, if you're going to base it off that. But he has won an MVP. He was top 5? He was top 2 in MVP, 5 straight years? Like, It was between him and Steph, and you can argue that it was a few years, James probably should have a couple more MVPs and all that. So that's tough. Like, I'm not.
And he had 25, 11, and 8 this season.
He was really good with Brooklyn before. And what's crazy was he was the one guy that you were like, all right, he's definitely going to play. He's guaranteed to be the healthy one out of the big 3, right? You were worried about Kyrie because Kyrie's always had injuries, and Kevin's coming back from an Achilles and all that. and he was the one that he
Mess.
went down with an injury. He was the one with the lingering injury. So, you know, just based off, I looked at this, and this one was the one that was because I see who you have ahead of him in your other tier, and I'm like, I wouldn't do that. I would put actually. So I know you're gonna stay that from the show, and I definitely gotta get on that one.
Yeah, me too.
But that one's tough. I'm not mad at you having there. So, but it would depend on the day of the week. It would be like, all right, he's the MVP. It's tough. That's tough. But I'm not mad at you having there. I understand why you have him there. So, with James Harden.
All right, so talk to me a little bit more now about Spida, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, and Chris Middleton.
I know people just think of Chris Middleton and they were like, nah, he can't be there. But we just saw him in his playoff run, and he's done it before, right? He's been a good player. And I think this year was the biggest thing, whether he was going to be, all right, he's just like your third best player, or he can be your co-captain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he showed it. He showed it with Giannis, and maybe that's because Giannis is just at a freaking another level. Like you don't need, you don't need a James Harden type, second tier player on your team. But he showed out this year big time. Had some big games, and his scoring is obviously his mid range game, his ability to hit free throws, hit some big shots like I said on the perimeter. So I'm not mad that he's in this tier. I wouldn't put him as a demi-star. I think he is a star. So I'm not mad at that.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Erison, because I wrote an article at the beginning of the year, and people kind of laughed in my face. Chris, I don't know if you remember this. I wrote that article, the case for Chris Middleton as not being the hands-down best player on this team, but their most important player. And then fast forward to the end of the season where, again, my breakdown of a Tier 2 player is the second best player on a championship team. Sometimes we don't have to be the smartest guy in the room or try to outthink a scenario, Erison. We literally just saw the Milwaukee Bucks win with him being their definitive second best player on the team. To me, that's a star. You don't really need to split any more hairs. What do you think?
I agree. I think if you look at Chris Middleton, let's say for 4 years until today, he's proven that he is one of the best scorers in the East. The Bucks team was in the lift, because they were contending for a championship, and I agree with you actually that maybe Chris Middleton in this playoff series especially was maybe the most important guy, because all eyes are on Giannis, and he's delivering. But if you look at the box score, if you look at the games itself, you see Chris Middleton doing a lot of things that doesn't pop up in the box score. The leadership on that guy is amazing. I think the leadership alone will bring him to tier 2. Now he's an NBA champion, and he's proven to be a great scorer. But I think the reason that people are overlooking Chris Middleton is because he was a second-round pick who had a rough start of his NBA career. And, he's made the best out of it. He's shown development, he's shown improvement, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. And for me, Chris Middleton in this list at tier 2 is a no-brainer. So I totally agree with Chris Middleton. I think the same goes for Jason Tatum as well. Because, Boston made the Eastern Conference Finals 2 times in the last 4 or 5 seasons?
I think it's 3 of the last 4.
Yeah, they made it his rookie year, right?
They made his rookie year. Don't on LeBron.
Yeah. What about Kyrie? And Kyrie.
I think Kyrie be killing chemistry.
Yeah, he's proven to be a star. He's a leader of a team at that age. He was picked number 3, but I think he was the best player in the draft class, and he's shown it since year 1.
No doubt about that. Should have been the number 1 pick.
There was a lot. No, so hang on. Let's talk about that. There was a lot of doubt on that. It was Markelle Fultz by a mile. It wasn't like, hey, let's think about some of these other options. Markelle Fultz in that draft class was getting like almost unanimous number 1.
I didn't get it either. I did not get it either. Yeah, I didn't. And maybe because I'm a Duke fan, so maybe I showed my bias. But I was like, I watched Jason Tatum, and I'm like, take off the Duke hat, and I was like, you look at him, you're like, he's everything you want
in a player.
Everything you want in a modern wing. Like
is this the second coming of Carmelo Anthony?
He was Carmelo.
Yes,
I saw Carmelo in him. And I'm like, why isn't that the number 1 pick? Like I thought Fultz was talented. But one thing that I didn't like was he didn't Yeah, and I know this isn't a big thing, especially in college, but like leading your team to the tournament at least, to me, that shows a lot. Like that's the thing what I liked about Cade is like he took a team that was underrated, like wasn't great, and was still able to take in the Big 12, take them to the tournament. With Markel, like I understand the team wasn't great, but it was like didn't do that, and just there was just certain things I wasn't like definitely a top 5 pick talent, but I'm like I see Tatum, I'm like that's an MVP.
That's
in the making, and like I said, maybe it was my Duke hat at the time, but I was like, he's everything you want.
I'm not a Duke fan. I'm not a Duke fan, and I saw it. I'm like, how is this guy?
And then they traded they traded
it up.
They traded up to go. So they could have just stood there and got Tatum of Philly, and they that's why Philly's in the mess they are because they made a lot of mistakes.
Had the number 1 pick, they traded back with Philly for number 3 to get
an extra pick
and get Tatum.
Yeah.
So Erson, what do you think? We still have Donovan Mitchell and Bradley Beal to be discussed. What do you think about those two guys being tier 2 players?
I love Donovan Mitchell, man. I think that guy was robbed of his rookie of the year. With Simmons being a rookie, being a year 2 player. And with Donovan Mitchell, if you look at Utah, I think the biggest reason they are a championship team right now is because of him, because he was playing in year 1 like he was in the league for a couple of years, Yep. As a dangerous scorer, as a leader, he was carrying a team, and he was a rookie. It's unbelievable, man. I think Donovan Mitchell is
a rookie,
yeah. And I have Donovan Mitchell as the same future as Trae Young. I think he will be a tier 1 player in a couple of years from now, for sure. I really like that guy a lot, and I think Utah traded for him. That was most mind-blowing thing for me. That was, they stole him, So there was no doubt. I like Donovan Mitchell a lot. And about Bradley Beal, yeah, I think he will. For me, nevertheless, he's one of the best scorers in the East, and he almost won a scoring championship. But for Bradley Beal, if I look at the tier 2 and I look at some names at tier 3, I think is Bradley Beal a tier 2 player? I highly doubt it, because Washington was a good team in the playoffs with him and John Wall, but it was always John Wall's team. And we've seen what Washington did with Russ Westbrook and Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is not a good 3-point shooter, and I think in tier 1, tier 2, to be there, you got to be a great 3-point shooter. He's a good scorer inside, but him missing a solid 3-point shooter is for me the reason to, from the 5 guys we're talking about right now, put him at number 5 and maybe even put him in tier 3.
Okay, fair enough. And just one thing about the great shooting, I've been talking with people about this on social media too. It's funny how when big media will put in your eyes like, hey, this guy's a shooter and this guy isn't. Devin Booker is a guy that you think of, and a lot of people describe him as a shooter. Only shot 34% from deep this last year. Yeah. So it's just kind of one of those things. Sometimes we kind of let other people's interpretation of who this player is.
Narratives.
These narratives.
People fall into the narratives and all that.
Like, they'll sneak into our perception too, which is why it's important that we do what we do here on Off the Ball Network, right? Like we always talk with each other. Someone's always looking at kind of, things through a different color lens and bringing it to light. And we're like, okay, let's hash this out. And is there any merit to this? Is there not? So speaking of that, JP, give some merit here on the last group of 5 that we talked about. James Harden all the way down to Chris Middleton here.
The James Harden argument, I know a lot of people are going to make an argument because of the MVP. If James Harden was still with the Houston Rockets, he'll definitely be a tier 1 player because he's leading the team and everything.
Bingo.
The reason he's not leading, the reason that he's in tier 2 is because Kevin Durant is going to be the number 1 guy no matter what. You've seen that James Harden sacrificed his game and took less scoring and did more assisting because Kyrie was going to score the basketball along with Kevin Durant because they're more super aggressive, and James Harden took a step back. Now, if James Harden was the number 1 guy on a team, he's definitely will be in tier 1. So that's the reason that James Harden is in tier 2. Going to Donovan Mitchell, exciting player. He's the coming of Dwayne Wade. You see his playoffs with the Utah Jazz scoring 50 and going back-to-back 50-point games against Jamal Murray. He's still going to be a tier 2 player, but he can make an argument for being a tier 1 player the next couple of years and everything. But you got Rudy Gobert, you got a pretty solid team on that Jazz team, and also getting Mike Conley too as well to give him that veteran leadership and being able to score without The thing with Donovan, sometimes he's really good in games, in the big games. Sometimes he might be inconsistent at times too as well. Jason Tatum, same with him. You know, that 2017 draft, Jason Tatum could easily be the number 1 draft pick over Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball that went to the Lakers. But, you know, his dad hyped him up and everything, saying that he's the next Jason Kidd. Bullcrap. So Jason Tatum, you see that especially his rookie year, you seen this kid was coming.
So polished, man. I'm sorry. I'll gush about Jason Tatum all day long. He's one of my absolute favorite players in the NBA.
Doesn't make sense why he was not the number 1 player.
Exactly.
I said it then, and you know,
that was the steal of the draft. To be honest with you,
even when he's hustling, man, they got to pick for their trouble too. So.
Imagine Philly right now with Embiid, Jason Tatum, and Ben Simmons.
Make Ben Simmons look better too.
Ben Simmons will look a lot better because he got 2 dynamic scores and everything. Not saying Tobias Harris is not like, you know, a great.
He's a demi-star. He's a good
scorer, but he's not.
He's the definition of a demi-star.
But the thing about it, Jason Tatum can create his own shot and create that offense and everything. But you know,
he's getting better at creating for others.
And there's still room to grow because there's still times where he could be ISO. You know, getting that ISO mode like Melo, right? That's why there are a lot of comparisons to Melo, right? Because there's sometimes he can stop with the ball. You know, once it gets to his hand, he's a ball stopper.
But and
there's still room for him to improve.
Yep.
He's already at like that all NBA level, and that's the scary thing about Tatum is
that
there is MVP. Mm-hmm. You know, Steven, if we both did our top 25 on the 25, I had him in my he could be an future MVP.
Yep.
You know, and it wouldn't shock me if he's an MVP the next few years. I mean, he's just that good. I mean, he played great for Team USA. You know, he's gonna be the captain of that Team USA team too.
That's what I was gonna say. If you guys look at the stats, Jason Tatum was probably like the second leader scoring behind Durant, ain't he? Mm-hmm. I think it was because he stayed consistent. You know, he had like that one game that he did a lot better than Durant, so you could tell how good Jason Tatum will be. Bradley Beal, I think a lot of people will probably be like, is he really a tier 2 player? I mean, the Washington Wizards were a bad team, but he shined so much out of the Wizards. And the thing about it with him and that team, Bradley Beal was never healthy. He wasn't really healthy. That's the big key thing. He missed a lot of games. He
didn't play the same way. When he was playing next to John Wall, he wasn't as ball dominant.
He wasn't. No. And when John Wall went out with that injury, you seen the promise and the potential that Bradley Beal could be, you know, in terms of scoring and being able to help facilitate a lot better than Wall could. That team, but he was just on those bad teams, and you know, getting Russell Westbrook, you know, triple-double himself. You know, you seen that Beal was going to be like the number 1 scoring option, so he definitely fits in tier 2. The question, I mean, like I say, if you get some pieces around him, I think you'll have a different argument for Bradley Beal because he's such a tremendous player and he always improves his scoring. If you just look at his stats, it always improves each and every year because it's like over 25 points the last couple of seasons that he had. And Chris Middleton, I mean, Mo said it best, you know, when we was talking about the playoffs, the Bucks would not go as far as Middleton goes. You see Middleton without Giannis, especially the last two games against the Hawks, Middleton really shine. He really shine. A guy that could score that basketball, and he's so very underappreciated because everybody's talking about Giannis and that monster games he had in, you know, the playoffs and also in the NBA Finals. But Chris Middleton is always the closer. Like Giannis is Shaq.
Yeah,
Chris Middleton's Kobe.
That's their version of Shaq and Kobe, right? Without saying it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to go that route, I would probably say that, and this is no disrespect to them, this just is how great those other two were. Like, they're probably, you know, the Walmart brand, you know. Shaq.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the poor man's version of Shaq. Yeah, but it's in that, if you want to describe how
it's in that way.
It's like, we knew Shaq was the guy, the most player, like you run through him, but Kobe was the one that if you needed a bucket, you know, you call him Kobe, and that's how they did it with Middleton and Giannis. And Giannis actually played like Shaq, which is what we wanted. Like, stop playing like Durant. I think that was the pressure for him to try to play like a wing, but you're not a wing. You're a big. Let's face it, Giannis is big. He's not a wing. You know?
Exactly.
And if he finally realized
he has some wing
that, you know, that net theory.
Capability. Yeah,
he has the capability, but get
he's
your
best.
Get behind
the screen man.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Middleton, like I said, like, in that last finals game, Giannis had that unbelievable performance, but Chris Middleton closed it out
He put up a
in the
40 piece
final
in the
minute of the
final.
game. Yeah, in the final minute of the game. So Chris Middleton is a very important piece for that Bucks team. And without Chris Middleton, I don't think Giannis would have ever saw a ring this year with the Bucks. So Chris Middleton
I agree.
definitely, and he's a two-time All-Star. He's a two-time All-Star. And how important he is. I mean, Giannis kept bringing his name up. When they did that team draft, the first person he brought up was Chris Middleton. He's like, I trust Chris Middleton with all my heart. That's how good Chris Middleton is. But he's definitely a tier 2 star though, because Giannis is going to get the number one option for that Bucks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And speaking of number one options, we're going to bring in the social media monster himself for the Off the Ball Network, Mr. Edgar, that new Tape City on Twitter. Edgar, how we doing, man?
I'm good. I just got back home. I was playing some basketball.
Oh, nice.
Hooping up. What tier player were you on the court today?
I'm only 5'10", so I'm really like a point guard, shooting guard.
Okay,
More shooting guard though.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so Edgar, I'm going to turn this over to you. We're kind of doing this 5 at a time. The next group of tier 2 players, Edgar, you've been on the show before during the player tiers. You understand the way it works. So the next group of players, I'll give it to you. We have Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, and now new teammate Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, and Zach LaVine. What do you think about those 5 players being in tier 2?
I think that's accurate. I like that list a lot. I mean, if I had to be devil's advocate, though, I personally wouldn't do it. But I know if I was on the outside looking in, somebody would probably say maybe Anthony Davis, gets. Maybe Anthony Davis shouldn't really be there just because he missed a lot of time because of injuries, and that's the great unknown with him. Like, you don't know what's gonna happen next season in terms of his health. But I think, again, if he stays healthy, he's a monster. I mean, he deserves to be there when he's fully healthy. You could even argue he'd be on a higher level. Like, people like to – I see some people like to disrespect Anthony Davis and say, well, he's not all that great. But people forget that when this guy is healthy, he's a monster. Like, he's a real monster. He's up there with the Embiids and, Giannis's, I think. And we saw that.
What about the rest of the 5, though? So we got Chris Paul here. We got Russell Westbrook, Bam, and Zach LaVine. What do you think about those guys?
Chris Paul absolutely showed you that he deserves to be there. I mean, the guy is what, 37 now?
36 coming into
30,
yeah.
Coming into 37, and he hasn't slowed down one bit. His game hasn't dropped at all. He still scores. He still passes. He's still the supreme leader on the floor. We saw what happened in the NBA Finals. And obviously you don't want to give any excuses for that, but I do believe he might have been kind of injured, maybe something that we didn't know about. The shoulder might have been bothering and stuff. But again, we don't want to make excuses, but still, this guy shows you that he is the ultimate point guard in the NBA still. I mean, to me, in terms of with everything that he does, I don't think there's a point guard better. If you want to argue in terms of age, sure, but he's still the best point guard there. Bam earned that. He's a two-way monster.
Yep.
Scores, rebounds, plays excellent defense. He's an excellent man-to-man defender. He helps on the roll, on pick and rolls. He's very aware, very active with his hands. And he made it to an all-star team. He's like that perfect like Miami Heat player.
Yeah.
Right? He's that type of player that you want on any team, like that type of gritty defender that can still score, but like his main priority at times is like to play defense and lock up other guys' big men. And Zach LaVine, I think Zach LaVine is going to show us something new next season. I think next season, with all the pieces that he has on his team, this is the year for him to take that leap, like to go even further. Like now he can focus primarily on what he does best, and that is scoring.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I actually think that he showed us that this season. The problem is that he just played for Chicago, right? And he has a lot of he's got a deep bag of tricks in his game. And one thing that, if you remember, right, when the Jimmy Butler trade happened and they got Zach LaVine, it looked like Minnesota got fleeced, but now, I mean, or it looked like Chicago, right, got fleeced because now Minnesota has Jimmy Butler, and then all that Chicago was left with was Zach LaVine. Well, let's fast forward to today. Jimmy Butler made it to the finals on the Miami Heat and is now entering a contract extension there. And Zach LaVine is showing that he can be an all-star level player on this team, right? So that's something to consider. Erson, I'll turn that same list of 5 over to you. What do you think?
Well, actually, for me, if I look at that list, I think the first guy I would put maybe on tier 1, and that's a big if. You know, if you look at Russell Westbrook, an efficient Russell Westbrook who can, you know, have good shot selection with the things he do, he's a no-brainer tier 1. But Russell Westbrook isn't efficient on offense, well, scoring-wise. So I think he will be for forever tier 2. I don't care how much triple doubles he has. I don't care how many times he's been the scoring champion. He will always be in the tier 2 because I rather have a guy score 20 and with 50% field goal percentage than a guy scoring 40 and staying at that 40 or fewer field goal percentage. You know, so I think Russell Westbrook deserves to be in tier 2. He will never be a tier 3 guy, but he will also never be a tier 1 guy for me. And regarding Chris Paul, you know, I totally agree with what Vin already said. He's almost 37 years old, and he's proving to be, you know, the best traditional point guard in the NBA. And I think he even scores very efficiently. He has flirted a lot of times with the 50, 40, 90 stat line, you know. So, and he was always making teams better. He made the Clippers better. You know, he made Houston better. Houston was already good, but he made even them better. And now he went to Phoenix, and he almost got the championship he deserved, you know. But will Chris Paul be a tier 1 player? I highly doubt that because the traditional point guard isn't in the NBA anymore, you know. With the scoring focused from the perimeter, I think Chris Paul 20 years ago, this Chris Paul would have maybe been a tier 1 player, but I think Chris Paul is also a good in tier 2. And regarding Anthony Davis, I think the healthy Anthony Davis should be a no-brainer tier 1. I think he was, you know, at the end of the Pelicans tenure, he was maybe the best big in the NBA at a certain point. Because if he's healthy, I would put him at tier 1, but he's shown to be, you know, not capable of winning a championship as a number 1 guy. He joined LeBron, they won together, and that's the reason for me Anthony Davis, as per now, is good in tier 2. And I'm very excited about Bam Adebayo, and I think he will be even a better big overall than Anthony Davis will. You know, especially defensively, that guy is so good, man. He can do it all. Especially, you know, with the pick and roll defense, I think that's one of the hardest things to do in the NBA. And I think in the Eastern Conference, he might be, you know, the best big doing that. And I think overall in the NBA, he will be the top 3 in the same thing as well. But regarding the scoring, I think if Miami Heat's put him more in a scoring situation, you know, where he can put up 20, 30 a night, he will be a tier 1 player. But, you know, as we said, you know, he's a perfect Miami Heat player. You know, he's a perfect part of that team. I think for the Miami Heat, you know, to win a championship, they don't need Bam Adebayo scoring 30. They just need to do what he's good at, you know. And I think that's because, those reasons will put him in tier 2 as well. But Zach LaVine, you already said it, you know, that guy is a scoring machine. He's been in a terrible Chicago Bulls team where they had to do more than he actually could. And I think for him to play with, you know, Lonzo, DeRozan, they will give him a chance to, I think he will never get to tier 1, to be honest, but I think he will be in the Eastern Conference staying this way, you know, flirting with the All-Star game every now and then. No, every year. But from the 5 guys, and regarding players I might put in tier 1 in the future or today, Zach LaVine is number 5 for me too. So he's good at tier 2, as per now.
Okay.
But I would even, if he wasn't such a good scorer as he is, I would even doubt putting him in tier 3 because Chicago was a bad team. But now they have got some good guys, you know, so he can prove to me that he belongs in tier 2. I think Zach LaVine is in a situation where I put him just like Bradley Beal, between 3 and 2. Not a 2 guy, but he's not really a 3 guy either. So I'm a tweener.
So we got tier 2.5 going on here with Erson. Yeah. I like it. So one stat line that you mentioned, someone mentioned 50-40-90. One of the low-key slept-on stats of the year is that Kyrie Irving actually had a 50-40-90 season, and no one really talked about it at all whatsoever. So shout out to Kyrie for that. So, JP, I'll give this over to you. One thing also real quick, I just want to touch on this with Bam Adebayo. Everyone gave great analysis, but the one thing that I think people left out was that he's actually a really good playmaker too. That I just it's already back that he has.
Yes.
So
especially in the high post, especially in the high post where he likes to create.
Yep.
JP, same 5.
Chris Paul, you can make an argument. You can make a little bit of argument that he could be a tier 1 player because of how he made his teams a lot better, just with his veteran leadership. Took an OKC Thunder that we would never think of to the playoffs. Took the Clippers to the playoffs. Took the Hornets to the playoffs.
Just real quick, just because you're not a tier 1 guy doesn't mean that you're a bad player. Chris Paul is not, like, no way he's a tier 1 guy, but he's still a really, really, really valuable player. There's only 8 guys that I have in tier 1. So.
Yeah, I was just saying you can make a little argument for it. He's still too. I agree with that. He made his teams. His teams are always better. That Clipper. The thing that killed Chris Paul is playoff success is one. He finally got over the hump. Injuries, because we probably talk a different way of Chris Paul if he didn't get hurt in that Houston series against Golden State. But you can make a little argument for Chris Paul, a great player. The traditional point guard, like Urson said, is not there anymore. But he's like the best traditional guard in the NBA. But age and injuries caught up, so he's definitely still tier 2. Russell Westbrook, I would never see as a tier 1 player just because he don't make his teams better. He is a great stat liner. He's not an efficient shooter. I think that the game really evolved when they went to more 3-point shots, and Russell Westbrook didn't benefit of, being, like one of those top 10 players or top 12 players just because he's not a great shooter. And I don't think he makes his teams better. I think he needs, I think he would be a great second scoring option. I think he's a lot better because you see with him and Kevin Durant and OKC what they could do. When he does it by himself, first round bounce, basically. So he's perfectly where he is as a tier 2 player, even though he's incredible putting out the stats and being Mr. Triple-Double. So I just never see him get his teams better. Be interesting what he will do with the Lakers this year. Anthony Davis, no brainer. If he was healthy, he'll definitely be a tier 1 player. But I've kind of been bouncing back and forth about that just because
he's on the team with LeBron, he ain't gonna be MVP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When LeBron's on the team, when LeBron's on your team, all the focus is going to be LeBron. He's going to be the number 1 guy and how he's going to play. But when Anthony Davis was with the Pelicans, he was a great player, but he was the number 1 guy, but he didn't really go anywhere until he locked up with another number 1 guy, and he became the second guy, even though he had to be the best.
1B. You can't call him number 2. He's 1B.
1B, yeah.
Yes, there you go.
Yes, sorry about that. But you see that, he had to be like the best player, but just because LeBron's going to get all that attention from the teams, he would have to be the best player, but still LeBron was still there. So Anthony Davis is still 2, and plus with the injuries, Bam is coming. He is coming. We talked about him in Miami, great playmaker, good scorer, can rebound, excellent defender. Like, he's everything you want in the big. He's young. He's improved so much. Made an all-star team. Had a double-double that year. Thing with Miami, just health. It's just health. Hopefully the players are healthy, and then we'll see how he does this year with this Miami Heat squad with him and Lowry and Jimmy Butler coming back. So we'll definitely see that. Zach LaVine, you saw flashes in Minnesota what Zach LaVine could be, and you didn't really expect him to shine really quick in Chicago. But you seen them numbers that he be putting up in Chicago. Yes, they were bad teams. He still made the All-Star team this year with the numbers that he put up in Chicago, and it's a lot different, because he got pieces around him now. So on paper, they're going to be like a play-in team. I don't see them as a playoff team, but they're better than they were in their position. So Yeah, Zach Levine's tier 2, just amazing talent. Could score that basketball, could shoot the ball. Definitely deserves to be tier 2.
All right, outstanding stuff. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to MyBookie. Go to their website, mybookie.ag, enter in promo code off the ball, and they'll hook you up with matching up to 50% of your first deposit and up to $1,000 cash. One of the best deals you'll ever get in that industry. They have fast 48-hour turnaround so you can get your winnings quick and high credit card approval rates. Go ahead and enter in your bet, place in promo code off the ball, and we'll win big together. And then shout out also to Manscaped. My fine folks over there at manscaped.com. Go over there, enter in promo code BTG. They'll hook you up with a 20% discount and free worldwide shipping on anything that you put there. And you can look great, feel great, and we'll help each other be better. All right, so we're kind of coming up against it. We only got 4 more players to discuss. Chris, couldn't think of a better way to close it out than to give it to you, man, because we're going to be talking about one of your dookies here. And we'll talk about the sport, and then we'll sign off. We'll close with a big announcement that Chris and I are going to share in. But, Chris, last 4 that we have here, we got Zion, Jimmy Butler, Rudy Gobert, and Karl Anthony Towns. What do you think about these 4 being in tier 2?
Oh, man. Okay. So I see who you had in your demi stars, right? And I wasn't on the show, but there's one guy, and I know this guy, may not be a true Robin or number 2 or 1B, but what I saw him do in the playoffs this year, and his defense, and I know he didn't have some great shooting games, but he had some games where he lit it up. Drew Holiday, I don't know if I could put Karl Anthony Towns or even Zach LaVine, and I love Zach, ahead of Drew Holiday. Just what he does for your team, like, it's so valuable. I know it's not sexy, and I know, Zach LaVine is like an IG model, right? He just so beautiful, right? It's just everything is everything. You want to love him so much, right? But it's like,
we just call Zach LaVine an IG model here on Breaking the Game.
I'm sorry, Zach. And listen, some people may think he is an IG model, but it's just Zach.
Wow, Chris is in love.
All right, guys, we're up at the back ends of the show here. This would be a great way to start it off, but we got some players to get through here, Chris. So yeah, let's go through Zion, Jimmy, and you're kind of touching on Karl Anthony Towns along with Rudy Gobert here. So what's your beef with Cat?
Beef with Cat is obviously tremendous player. What he can do for his size, his ability to shoot. I mean, he could shoot the 3 ball really well for a guy his size. I think last year or 2 years ago, he shot like 8 threes a game and shot at like a 40% clip. Mm-hmm. So he's an efficient player. I think for him, it just comes down to, and I know we can maybe overrate winning and all that, but he hasn't done it. And it's not like he hasn't had the talent around him. He has. And we haven't seen that yet. So that's something I want to see from him. And I think he can. We see Devin Booker do it, right? So this could be the year where he's this year's Devin Booker, where, he finally understands, playing in the league for 6 years, finally gets it. And I think that he can definitely be there. But I want Drew in that tier 2. I just love Drew Holiday. Maybe that's why. Jimmy obviously is, and Jimmy Butler obviously deserves it. I mean, he's there. Zion, I love Zion.
Right.
I love Zion. I think he's another guy where we did that top 25 and top under 25 can be an MVP. Still got to see it. They have to build that team, and they got to make sure he's happy first. If we don't even know if he's going to be in New Orleans, long term. But I'm not mad at him being there. Rudy's probably one people will be like, he shouldn't be there. What he can do, on the court, protect the rim is very valuable. That's why he got $200 million. There's more to basketball than defense. And there is times where I get on Rudy. He's not he's not even the most perfect defensive player, even though he's a defensive player. Getting in the perimeter, but overall, what he can do to affect the game. Utah was the number 1 defense for a reason. He was a big reason why. So maybe switch Karl with Drew. Maybe I would do that, but overall, I mean, I think how you set it up, your tiers, it's I don't have too many arguments with your tiers and with the demi stars and superstars. I think everything you did was pretty good and pretty accurate. So you did a good job of doing all your analysis for these tiers.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Chris. So what we're going to do now, we got a major announcement that we're going to make. We'll save that for the podcast. But here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio, we're coming up against the close. Edgar, I appreciate you coming by, even if it was just for a short stay. Glad to see you nonetheless, man. I'm going to give it over to you and just kind of let the people know, kind of what just keep, reinforcing that you are the Shams Charania, the Adrian Wojnarowski of the Off the Ball Network.
Edgar bombs.
There we go. We got egg bombs here. So
egg bombs. Yes, egg bombs.
Egg bombs. There we go.
Hey, I'm trying. I mean, you can find me on Twitter at new_tape_city. That's where I post my main Knicks stuff and my general thoughts, my Chelsea soccer stuff, and Giants. The Giants played tonight, so I'm gonna be posting Giant tweets. And then you could also find me on the Off the Ball Network official Twitter account at OTB_network. And we just post a lot of updates. Like the free agency stuff was crazy. We had tweets popping up left and right. We had everything updated. Every guy that got signed, every guy that got traded, any big deal that happened, of course, with its proper sources and whatnot. They try to keep us down. They try to hit us with copyright with soccer stuff, but
man,
they're not going to keep us down for too long.
No, I got the email and I was like, no, don't, because they temporarily disabled the account, and they said I did a quick claim and they unblocked it. And that's when I was like, because I remember you posting it and I started getting viral. I was like, hold up, that happened last year, and I don't know if you remember, but it happened last year where one of the soccer videos you posted. And when you do it with the audio too, they hate that. They're not like the NBA. They're not like the NBA where NBA you could post whatever. It doesn't really matter. Right. Soccer, for some reason, they really they get on you with that.
Listen, we're gonna get up there one day and we're gonna be posting the soccer stuff, and there's not gonna be any copyright about it. That's just how it is.
There we go.
We're gonna do it. That's just how
we're gonna have a whole football club, so don't worry.
Oh, and by the way, I wanted to say one thing really, really quick.
Oh, please do.
Because I saw this the other day. I forgot who was doing it. I think somebody in the Athletic, but no hate whatsoever, just respect. Steven was doing tier list first, by the way. Just saying. He did this first. I saw it from him first. This year, like this last month or so. Everybody else?
I think I know who you're talking about too now, because I have a subscription to Athletic.
They might have gotten the idea from him, because as soon as he did the tier list first, I saw another one pop up from a verified account, and I was like, oh.
That's just what we do at Off the Ball Network. We're moguls.
We're trendsetters. We're
trendsetters, man. People, you never know. People could be watching. Just because they're at big time networks. You never know. They like to take ideas, and obviously they got a big platform, so you just never know. You really never know who's watching.
I'm flattered.
Yeah.
So
right. No hate whatsoever. It's just like, hey, we appreciate it. If like anybody takes something, we appreciate.
Come on the show. We'll talk about it.
They be watching.
Come on the show, and we'll talk about it. All right, Ersin, turn it over to you, brother. Same thing. Just kind of close out for the fine folks that are listening and watching.
No, it was fun to do, and I love tier 2. I think I will agree with everyone on it, except for a few. And talking about the tier stuff, all around NBA things, I think that's a symbol of Off the Ball Network. Unless we have a lot of Knicks fans, but we have honest Knicks fans. Can stay objective and not run a Knicks agenda or something. So. Especially with me giving trade.
We try.
As good as you can, right? As good as you can.
As good as you can. Sometimes, we can get a little
crazy.
Emotional to say, but it's tough. We've been down for a while, so,
Yeah. But I think me giving trade the most respect in this list is a summary of it all, so. But I really enjoy doing it. And me personally, you can find me on Twitter at Ersendem at NYK. And I usually focus on a lot of Knicks stuff and mostly NBA draft prospects, which I do a lot of scouting of. And I watch EuroLeague every year for last, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years. And now I have an extra incentive following the draft prospects there. And for the Knicks fans, I will follow a lot of Joko Beites, So that's a fun thing to do next season because I'm watching these games on TV. So now I have one guy that can look at particularly. So that's fun to do.
Excellent stuff, and thank you, Erison, for coming on the show. And just big shout out to you, man. You're hitting the ground running, being one of the newer members of the Off the Ball Network. You're
I appreciate
an
it,
excellent
man.
addition. Absolutely,
I appreciate
we gotta have you
it.
back on. Absolutely. All right, so JP, man, what's up? Let's close out for the fine folks.
Hey, great show. Enjoy the Tier 2 list. You can find me on Twitter, JP Franchise 57, where I'll be posting and doing all the retweeting. You can catch me on the NBA 2K League post-game show Wednesday through Saturday on Dash Radio and Nothing But Net Radio. And then you can catch me on YouTube doing a lot of different recaps on Off the Ball Networks or podcasts. So definitely check us out. And we're hitting the ground running in year 2.
Yeah, and JP, kind of likewise with you and Erison, man. Like, you're one of the newer guys, and I love how active you are, man. You've been such a welcome addition. Appreciate all the hard work that you do and your availability just to come on the shows. And big shout out to you for that video you put up about the Kawhi Leonard contract. That was a great in-depth analysis. I mean, it was in-depth as it could be for 5 minutes. You covered a lot of material in that 5 minutes, so there wasn't a second wasted. And great job to you on doing that, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Chris, bring us home, baby.
Hey, man, I'm just looking at the screen right now. I'm like, I'm surrounded by greatness. I just want to give you guys your flowers. It's, sometimes I have to pinch myself. I'm like, yo, we got a squad. We got a serious talent. Like, and I'm so happy. Erson, you're the latest member. I'm happy we were able to connect. You were able to join us, and then your notoriety has gone up too. People like your breakdowns and all that. I understand your international love, so that's been great. Obviously, JP, you the franchise man, holding it down for the 2K stuff and all that. And doing great stuff with the YouTube and all that. And then Edgar killing it with the I'm sure his fingers are very sore, and he's on the 10-day. He's on load management. I did agree to it, guys. He is allowed to load manage. It's fine.
Saving him for the playoffs.
Saving it for the playoffs. We got to get down for the stretch and all that. We got football coming, so he's got to get ready. He's got to be prepared and all that. And and obviously, Steven, I appreciate you having me on the show. Always a pleasure to be on. I'm not going to talk much about myself because I want to give you guys your flowers because you guys are great, and I'm just happy that you're a part of the network. Just want to say that. So you can follow me off the ball pod on where to find me, guys. Off the ball pod on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. But appreciate you having me on.
All right, and we'll close out here for the podcast, and then for the radio show, and then we just got an announcement that I want to share with the guys on here for everyone listening on the podcast. So for the president of the Off the Ball Network, Chris LeBron, for the rest of the fellas here, Edgar, Erison, JP, myself here, Stephen Gillespie, for the Breaking the Game show. This has been Breaking the Game, Player Tier 2, here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. Shout out to Manscaped. Shout out to MyBookie. We will catch up with y'all next time. Much love, everybody. All right, so for everyone that's staying with us here on the podcast now, coming over from the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio, thank you so much for coming over. Like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.
5 stars.
5 stars, baby.
Five stars.
All the time.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. We're going to bring it home with a big announcement that Chris and I are going to share in. JP, Erison, Edgar, y'all are part of this. We're here all Off the Ball Network family. So everyone, thank you so much for coming over from the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. Thank you for tuning in to Breaking the Game. Chris, breaking news from the Off the Ball Network family today. You and I, we're going to be co-hosting an NBA draft-centric podcast called Draft Capital. Chris, what do you think about this, man?
Man, I'm excited about this. Obviously, the draft is kind of what started everything, with the podcast and then with the network. Like, that's how I, got some notoriety doing a lot of draft stuff. You know, I remember having my first draft guide, Matt Babcock, and talking to him and just like, yo, I need to do more draft stuff. Like I love breaking down. I was doing a lot of football stuff, like, and I was like, I didn't go heavy into basketball. Then I started, and once I did that, I was like, wow, like the way he was breaking down players, I was like, I never thought of that way about a player, breaking it down with that. And then I started to do more and more, and then podcast grew, and then that's what led to, you know, the network and all that in a way. So the draft to me is near and dear to my heart, and I've done, obviously you guys have seen me and Steven, we've done draft type shows on our pods and and talk about it religiously, and it just made sense to just, hey, let's just do a straight draft pod. So I'm excited to have it. I'm sure we're gonna have, you know, you guys on us, and we talk on the reg about, you know, prospects and all. So you're going to be on, tell us, I'm sure you're going to be on, you know, helping us with the international guys and all that, you know, be our international scout, all that. But I'm excited about this. It's going to be fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, me too, man. And this is one of those things where like everyone in this room, the reason why I wanted y'all to stay on is exactly what Chris started to lay out, right? Like Erson, from the short time that you've been on, one of the big things that we've done, especially on the draft show, is, you know, I respected a lot of your analysis on, you know, players in general, right? Like obviously the international side, but even here in the States, right, with you know, the excuse me, the G League team, right? Now there's going to be the overtime elite, and obviously the NCAA now. So like all these new mediums that are being introduced in a way that we can cover the future NBA players of the NBA. Obviously, you're going to love having you on there. JP, you were on the draft show, speaking on team needs, speaking on, you know, just overall insight on the way things went. And then Edgar, you too, man. You've been doing a great job of, you know, keeping up with guys like Miles McBride and Jericho Sims. They're on your New York teams, and been keeping up with Summer League and posting up and all that stuff. So this is all just a continuation of just the Off the Ball Network family love. And Chris, you know, obviously the fact that, you know, since I've come on, I saw you started covering draft player, or, you know, the draft process and having guys on. I was like, well, I want to try my hand at that, right? And so for this upcoming season, this will be our third season officially covering the NBA draft in an in-depth and analytical manner. And I'm excited about that, man. I think it's going to be great. So what I'm going to do here is, real quick, before we close out, I'm going to share my other screen for the fine folks that are listening. You're going to have to, you know, come back and watch the video. But for everyone that's watching live right now, my screen is freaking out. And I'm sorry about that. But anyway, so basically what I'm trying to do is show you that if you go to Twitter, you can look up Draft Capital NBA. It's also available on Instagram and Facebook as well. So anywhere that you can find us, follow us. Chris and I, we're going to be recording our first episode real soon. We're going to be talking about just kind of how we came again to be where we are now. We're going to be talking about players that we were high on in this last draft, and then touching on some of the big names that are coming into this next draft class. So again, just thank everybody for watching and listening. Please follow all these fine gentlemen and the work that they're doing. And please, again, go to offtheballnetwork.com for all of your sports needs. That's where we all contribute to. And the group's getting bigger. Shout out to the Blue Bloods, right, Chris? We just brought those guys on. As great as our basketball coverage has been, our NFL coverage is kicking up, and now college football is kicking up, right?
Yes, I'm excited to have them aboard. Like the brand keeps getting stronger. Like football, we know we got everything you need in coverage. We have, you know, so, you know, happy to have them. They actually, I think they got a show tonight, I believe. I don't have the time, but they're gonna have their first show under the OTB banner today. So I'm excited to have them a part of this. And man, it's just. Sometimes I'm like, wow, like people want to join Off the Ball. Like it's crazy. Like there's people that like, and not just any, like we're talking about, I mean, the Blue Blood, if you haven't listened to their show or watched their show, they have a great show. They do a lot of college football, especially like the lower levels, the HBCU school. Like they do a great job of covering college football and all that. And they've had a lot of great guests, you know, from the lower level schools and all that. So to me, it's just a great addition to the Off the Ball family. So continue to grow. we got the Ice Shaker. We have our promo code for that, so that's another thing we're growing with the sponsorships. I got one more in the works, and just follow us, and we'll let you know about that. But it's been great, man. We got a lot of dope content. That's the thing, dope content, and sky's the limit for us.
Yep, and we just celebrated our 1 year earlier this week, and now we're following up our first act of year one with a lot of great promos, a lot of great shows, a lot of great, content creators coming on board, and like the Beastie Boys said, right? My posse's getting big, and my posse's getting bigger, right? So we'll roll out on that note. Shout out to the Beastie Boys. So for all the fine gentlemen that we have here on the show, thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll catch up with y'all next time. Much love.